High Performance Vet Pro Radio.
Welcome to High Performance Vet Pro Radio. Here, you will learn everything you need to know to become a high-performance veterinary professional. We will focus on optimizing your sleep, fitness, nutrition, mental performance, stress response, and work-life balance. Please enjoy these professional interviews with cutting-edge content from Dr. Jennifer Quammen and human performance coach Ryan Smith from hyperfliving.com.
Here we are.
Here we are. All right. So tonight is an interesting topic. This is one that Jen she's like, there's really something called food psychology. Mm-hmm. So let's dive in. So tonight is about the psychology of eating. Who knew, right? So basically the understanding how we eat and why we eat plays into what we eat. So
it's not just whatever's in front of your face.
Well, that may happen, but that may not be the best thing that happens for us.
Okay. Gotcha.
So let's dive in. Would you like to introduce us?
Sure. So hello and good evening or good morning if you're watching this on replay, everyone. I am Jen Quammen. I'm a veterinarian and I work in private practice some, but also Ryan and I have this strong interest in human wellness and well-being. And so we've kind of come together to work on that a little bit. So we like to say we do the human side of vet med. Outside of practice, I stay reasonably involved in organized medicine, I would say. So you may have seen me along the way there. And I am, let's see, what other fun fact? I'm a recovering, no, I think I still am, math nerd. So Ryan is different than me and probably many of you. He is not born and raised in the veterinary world, has a master's degree in exercise physiology, has this certification that I think will play in mostly to what we're going to talk about tonight in food psychology, has some training in positive psychology, a little business coaching background, and I'm trying to think what else. Yeah. What other fun things? A lot of mental performance. So Ryan's worked a lot with
endurance athletes.
Right, endurance athletes. And so a lot of their performance, certainly there's a physical component to it. But a lot of the what gets you through mile number X is really more your voice in your head more than anything else. So I think that's kind of what there is about us.
Yeah. And a lot of what we'll talk about tonight are things that I've also worked with and seen develop in athletes, especially female athletes. And since we know that there's a large portion of veterinarians that are female and a large portion of those that are also athletes, you may relate to some of these things that we talk about. So especially endurance athletes, we see a lot of nutritional issues that come up, and not just body image things, although that plays a lot into athletes. So what is eating psychology? If you think about eating psychology, what would be the first thing that kind of comes to mind as far as when you combine food and psychology together? Anything that kind of comes to mind there?
Well, I'm a doctor, so I tend to think about disorders. I guess is kind of the first thing that would come to mind for me.
Right. So so the most common thing that we think about with food psychology, eating psychology, is dealing with eating disorders, anorexia and bulimia. Those are the two big ones that we have to deal with. But when we actually look at the numbers, the less than 0.1% of the population actually falls into one of these, what we call exaggerated forms of a disorder relationship with food. So, it's a very small portion of it. So what we seldom address and what we're addressing with us tonight is the 99.9% of the population that has our own unique, complex, interesting, and often problematic relationships with our food and our bodies. We now know that about 2/3 of the U.S. population is either considered overweight or obese. And it's even an even bigger portion now of our children that are growing up that way. So, when we think about food and the body relationships and all the things, those things that come along with it, it's not the 0.1% of the population that is really dealing with food things, although we have to deal with them. Those are those extreme portions as well. So,
we see a lot of obesity in veterinary patients, obviously, as well. We think there's some correlation there.
I would typically think so, yeah. So there's a lot of that comes to do with love and relationships and things that definitely happen there.
Yeah. Food is love.
It is, yep. At least that's what we're taught many times, right? So really, every issue we face with the body is somehow linked to mind. So, and many people will even say, whether you're faith-based or whatever it may be, also say that it's linked to the heart and soul, right? So, which is why we feed animals and why we tend to carry our stress and will eat those types of things. It is, especially whether breakups or loss of loved ones, those types of things, heart and soul are really involved. When you see wakes and whatnot, you'll see huge spreads of food that come along with it. So, yeah, heart and soul involved with eating. But by working on our inner world, for most of us, we can make a profound shift in our metabolic system. So that chemistry that we have to deal with, and most of us have some type of metabolic, I don't want to call it disorder, but we have some incongruence in our metabolic system. So that, which is why 2/3 of the population in the U.S. has some type of metabolic disorder. But it really doesn't come down to just what we eat. It comes down to a lot more than that. So the truth is our nutrition is not really broken, and it doesn't need to be fixed for us on an individual basis. And we need to let go of the I need to fix my diet kind of thing, because that word diet, as we'll get into here in a moment, is just way off base, at least how we use it from a human standpoint. So your relationship with your food is much more a reflection of your relationship with yourself. So it's not just a matter of whether I'm eating good quality foods. Am I eating salads? Am I eating, salmon and the fish that they tell us to eat? And am I taking vitamins? All those things play into our health, but they're really not the relationship with our food, which takes me to one of my favorite quotes that I kind of come up with. I found as I was going through a lot of the research here. So our biology writes our story, and our story writes our biology. What's that mean to you?
Well, so to me, this just gets back to the idea of genetics versus environment, nature, nurture kind of a thing,
right,
is where that takes me. And maybe that's my science brain, but that's sort of where I think about it from.
Yep. So what about emails? Anybody else have any ideas while I'm kind of move on through the thoughts on this?
That would be a nudge that Jen doesn't have the answer Ryan wants.
No, it's good. I wouldn't. Right. We posted a great picture in the groups the other day, which was just again to get that idea of the.
Right.
So I'd like to hear what other people think about it as well. But really, if you think about our biology and our environment, but specifically our biology, we have this whole symbiotic relationship with microorganisms that live on our skin and in our gut. But how we deal with our own personal life completely affects those things. So stress plays a huge role in how we handle the or how our microbiome changes over time, how we have a relationship with our whether we take medicines or not, right? Those change our biology and change our story then, and then our story ends up changing our biology, right? So Jen's posting a question there so that you all can answer in the actual questions tab. And a lot of this actually comes down. So if you were on the last webinar we had, which was about the language of success and failure, that really plays a role into our relationship with food as well. So the language we use of diet versus nutrition, right? So if we think about diet in the human versus the diet in animals, right? So as a veterinarian, what do you think about when you talk about diet?
Yeah. So for me, diet is, if I think about the diet of a cow,
Mhm.
think about the things that it eats.
Right.
Right. Naturally. If I think about the diet of a dog, then I think about the things that that animal actually consumes on the day-to-day basis.
Right.
Different than how we think about that for people.
Yeah.
And people, diet is automatically an exclusionary thing.
Right.
I'm on a diet, so I can't have X,
Right.
so it is truly a foreign word.
Mhm.
It's a little bit different than, and I don't know where that switch came from. I don't know how that happened. There's probably some marketing and media and things behind that.
Right.
But it's interesting because I do think it's like a 180 on how we look at that perspective.
Right. Yeah. At some point in time in human language, diet ceased to become what we eat and move to what we don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Same way with, you'll hear all the time, eat more fruits and vegetables, right? And it's just automatically fruits and vegetables are lumped in together. And as the word fruits comes first,
Mm-hmm.
right, you automatically think that they are the same thing. And if I have to choose between one, I need to eat more of both. Well, if I'm going to eat one, I'm going to choose fruits because they're sweet and right versus they're not nutritionally the same, right?
And they're listed first, so they have to have top priority, right?
Exactly, right? So there's a psychology that goes into how that is listed. So fruits and vegetables are not the same, and they need to not be thought about in the same way from our nutrition standpoint. This is a big one that I know I was taught as a kid, and most people were as well. As eat everything on your plate because, right?
There's people that go without.
Exactly. There's starving kids in wherever, right? Yeah. So another one is breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
We've modified that a tiny bit.
We have, yeah. But when most people, there's no clarification on breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So when we go through with that means that anything that I eat for breakfast is important. If it's a candy bar, if it's a piece of cake, if it's a bagel or a donut or a bowl of cereal or eggs and bacon, they all have the same weight because it's part of breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day versus the way we talk about it is breakfast is the most important meal of the day to not screw up.
Right.
Yep. Because what you have for breakfast is going to play into how well your brain works for the rest of the day. Yep. Any thoughts, comments, questions from anybody on that as we kind of go through it?
Yeah. So if we go back to the quote about biology writing your story and story writing your biology, we have a comment that, basically your biology doesn't automatically count you out. So it doesn't, you're not, I guess the way I would interpret that is that you're not pigeonholed into this is the way it's got to be,
right.
So it's a little bit flexible.
Yeah.
And then Laura made a little comment on the more fruits and vegetables that all produce is created equal. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah. I think hopefully that is sarcasm. Knowing Laura, I would say that's sarcasm.
I think that's sarcasm from her.
I know.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, so as we dive into what most eating issues that people tend to have, they kind of fall into one of 7 areas. And there is always going to be some overlap, but we tend to, as we dive down in with people, there is one that's really underlying as their major eating issue. So those would be overeating, binge eating, stressful eating, chronic dieting, body image, weight loss, and digestion.
And can you tell me the difference? I think I know, but between overeating and binge eating?
Yeah. So overeating means that I'm just kind of continuously eating. So I tend to, whether there is a lot that's on my plate and I eat all of the food that's on my plate because I was told to. And in the US now, obviously, when we order food, if it's fast food, that's always upsized, right? What used to be a small or what used to be a large is now a small and just goes up from there. So we tend to overeat just because it's there and we consume it.
So that's like a chronic
eating.
Just, okay.
Yeah. Yep. Versus a binge eating, which is I'm starving or I'm stressed and I'm going through and I'm eating all the time, which is different than stressful eating, right?
I was going to say, so is binge eating different than stressful eating? Right. And so where would eating before finals fall in?
So binge eating would be, the old Lay's commercial that you bet you just can't eat just one and somebody eats the whole entire bag.
Sure.
That's binge eating,
okay.
right? Or they sit down with to have a little bit of ice cream, and before they know it, the entire pint or half gallon or maybe gallon is gone.
One sleeve of the Girl Scout Thin Mint cookies
Right.
gone,
Right. Exactly.
rather than 2 cookies. You
Right.
eat the whole sleeve.
Yes.
Got
So that's your binge eating.
Not that I would know anything about that.
No, of course not. No, not as well as our health and wellness coaches.
Oh yeah,
We wouldn't
right.
know anything
Yeah,
about that,
we're
right?
totally not human.
Right. Yes. Versus stressful eating. Yeah,
Okay.
that stressful eating is when I'm stressed, what's happening, and am I only eating because I'm stressed and I'm not hungry,
Mhm.
right? That chronic dieting, that's that yo-yo dieting that people
Mhm.
deal with, right? Body image is a huge one. Why, especially on diets and the chronic diets, but it's like I starve myself, or I'm so worried about, and I work out all the time because I'm worried about my body image, right?
Mhm.
And there's a huge pressure on that, obviously, from the media too.
Right. You have to fit into the size 0 models' clothes.
Right.
Craziness.
Yes. Obviously weight loss, which is different than chronic dieting, just weight loss. I am overweight, or I'm obese, and I'm over fat, and I need to lose weight.
So this is like under eating, if you will, to
Well,
lose weight, or this is different.
well, this is my goal is all the time weight loss.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
So it's
Mhm.
just, I deal with chronic overweight, or I'm dealing with chronic obesity, and I'm trying to lose weight. Right. And then digestive issues, that plays a huge portion into it as well.
Mhm.
Yep. What's that?
Our peanut gallery has decided that Ben and Jerry's only comes in single serving, regardless of the size of the container.
Oh, interesting.
Mhm.
Yes.
Which category would that fall into?
That would still consider binge eating. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Unless it's finals week, and then it might be stressful eating.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. There we go.
Or right before I have to go do, I don't know, one of those surgeries that makes you
Right.
nervous. What's the one thing that kind of raises your blood pressure a little bit?
Mine.
Well, none for
Any
you. I
any
suppose.
surgery. I
Okay,
guess.
none,
Yeah.
I suppose, for you.
Yes. No. All right. So moving on. So when we get into this, symptoms are not the disease. So many times we'll have people that will end up with a diagnosis of chronic fatigue, or they've got digestive issues, or headaches, and there's a psychological, they have a dietary obsession, and there's all these things that are many times people will consider a disease or a diagnosis, but they're really truly are symptoms of more of an underlying issue, right? So chronic fatigue might be the diagnosis, but truly it's just a symptom of something bigger. Same way with ADD and ADHD.
Mhm.
It's typically, how do we diagnose ADD and ADHD? As a father of a child who's been diagnosed with ADHD, it's, you have a list of symptoms, and once you reach past 5 of those symptoms, it is a diagnosis of ADD or ADHD.
Mhm. So it's more of a constellation of symptoms more than, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
But instead of actually driving at what the root cause is,
Mhm.
all we're doing is looking at a list of those symptoms and creating a diagnosis. Pretty familiar with that. That happens quite a bit in everyday
All the
things,
time.
right? And it's not always wrong. It's just for when we're dealing with humans and food issues, just giving them a blatant diagnosis may not be the best way to do it too, right? So there's different types of diagnoses as well. We can have toxic diagnoses, right? So it's that if I tell somebody that you are overweight or you are obese, that, because that has a negative spin to it, can be considered a toxic diagnosis.
Just by labeling it.
Right.
Mhm.
Just by labeling it, right? Versus okay, we need to work on building a healthy relationship with food, or we need to work on, improving your food quality, or this, kind of the thought of moving forward versus, like we talked on language, it's that, are we spinning it negatively, or are we moving forward with it?
Got it.
Yep. So that's our symptoms versus our disease. There's also anti-diagnoses. I was kind of looking through, and there's one like telling somebody that you are not weak-willed. That is an that is not a positive
Mhm.
diagnosis. That is an anti-diagnosis,
Huh.
right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So lots of again, the use of language and metaphors that we use in there. So,
and I would imagine there's a lot of cultural shift in that depending on where you were raised and kind of values around that as well.
Yep. Do we have any more from our peanut gallery or anybody else as well?
Not at the moment.
Okay. So as we're going through and kind of looking at the checklist of eating distinctions, as we call them. So these are just different things about how we eat and our how we go through our relationship with food. Helps us to identify which kind of way we were looking at from the
categories
of the eating issues, right? So I can look at these and then use this checklist as a way to potentially start moving forward from it as well.
Sure.
Because if I am talking with a client and we're talking about, I'm going to ask them about their eating speed. How quickly do you eat? Well, I don't ever have time to eat, and I always eat super fast, right? So I'm gathering that information about their eating speed. Same way, do you eat when you're relaxed, or do you only eat when you're stressed? What's your rhythm? Are you consistent in your meals, or are you skipping meals quite often? Is there pleasure in your eating, or is there something that is, I don't know, where you just there is no enjoyment in eating. It's only there for fuel. Exactly. Right. Which is kind of moves into the next one of nourishment quotient. This is also, am I using food only as fuel, or am I using it for nourishment?
I can't imagine not having pleasure associated with food. Like, if eating a piece of chocolate and eating a piece of celery were the same to me, I can't even, and I know there's chemical triggers why a lot of those things happen too.
Right.
But like behaviorally, that just doesn't compute for me.
Right. And it's the equivalent of eating a McDonald's versus eating, Jeff Ruby Steakhouse here in Cincinnati, or a Ruth Chris, steak that is this, really sought out type of meal, right? So, or whether you're, any of those types of things, there's a complete disconnect that comes from there too. Awareness of meals. Again, are people so involved in cell phones and all these things that there is no awareness of what they're eating? Do they know the textures and the taste? Do they know different spices and that, the feeling that comes with eating different foods? Do they have toxic dietary beliefs, right? So if fat is bad, all dietary fat is bad, I can't eat cholesterol. It can be any of those types of things as well. Separate from nourishment quotient, but very, very similar, is the quality of our foods, right? So am I eating good, healthy, quality foods? Am I eating processed foods? Am I eating organic foods? There's a variance in those and nutritional content that comes there too. So and then you have your macronutrient balance as well, right? So there's diets that are low fat diets. There are what's called the other side, which is the ketogenic diet, which is a high fat, super low carbohydrate diet. So we've got these types of things, which are the extremes, and most people don't need to be at either one of those extremes. We need to have a balance of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. And it doesn't have to be the same all the time as well, right? Then at the same time, as if I'm getting caffeine and sugar use, so we're using artificial energy because we're dealing with chronic fatigue, we're dealing with any types of, that's going to be a trigger for me as well to look at what's going on in some potential eating issues. All right, so moving on. Do we have any questions so far before I jump into the helping to identify kind of the ways that we can use for ourselves or helping other people as well? That's going to be our next area. So we'll give them a moment there to take place. How are we doing on time?
We're doing well. We're about 25 minutes in.
Okay.
So it's good.
So
for
we got about,
like to shoot.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll probably finish up in another 15 minutes or so.
We have a comment about celery being a negative calorie food.
A negative calorie food. So
it takes more work to actually consume it, I guess, than you gain from eating it from a caloric standpoint.
Yeah.
Again, if you're counting calories.
If you're counting calories, which the law of thermodynamics does not apply in the body.
It applies. It's not the only thing that applies.
Right.
That's different.
Yes.
So I threw a question up if y'all have a moment to comment on that as well. If you have anything that sort of, what are those foods that trigger you either in a positive or negative way? And it may be something that you ruminate on, but if you want to share those, you probably will see that there's some trends among all of us.
Yep. And when we think about caffeine and sugar use, I mean, that's a big one. Most people, you hear people talk about, I just can't get my day started without caffeine, which is a symptom of a bigger issue typically, right? And then we look at sugar use, and if we look at functional MRIs of the brain, we actually see that sugar stimulates the same, especially a processed sugar. It stimulates the brain much in the same way as narcotics do. Yeah, in the same dopamine type hit that we may get from cell phones and all those things too. So caffeine and sugar use can be a huge one when we move in there. So if we're trying to identify for ourselves as well as to help other people maybe with eating issues. So it's not just a matter of, most people are like, just tell me what to eat. Give me a diet. Give me how many calories I need to eat on a daily basis. Give me my macros, just give me the same meals and fix it for me and tell me what I need to eat, right? Or I need to eat more salads, or I need to, whatever it is. It's very basic.
I would be bored to death.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, you could get it done. And again, in the short term, like that will accomplish the goal of weight loss or whatever is the goal. But how sustainable is that?
Exactly. When it comes down to diet versus lifestyle. And again, that we're wanting to go to that relationship versus just eating for the sheer fact of eating. We talk many times in our talks about we have a talk that's called A Tale of Two Dogs. That is when, an animal presents to you otherwise healthy, their numbers are healthy, but this is a dog that's given the cheapest food, that is given, a little bit of water, and it's dirty water. They have no love from their owners or whatnot. And, many people would consider it at the very least probably neglect. Some people would consider it abuse. And that's the same thing that many of us do to our bodies.
Right.
So,
excuse me.
So let's kind of dive into these 4 questions. Do we have anything there that we need to talk about?
We have a question/comment around caffeinating.
Okay.
So with respect to caffeine, what do you think about that becoming a habit and part of a routine more than like a true addiction, I guess is the way to think about this. So,
and it can be, and then there's kind of a way to test this. And so for a lot of people, we need to cycle through different things to see if we are, if I get up and I have water, or I change it to decaf, or I do something along the lines of changing the type of thing that I'm ingesting, right? So for some people, if we switch over and do some type of an herbal tea, which is going to give me still some, maybe a stimulant, but not quite to the degree that coffee will. So what is my physiological response to that? Right. If I drink water and I don't need to drink, or I can get up and I can actually go a day or two without coffee and I have no effects, negative effects from that. So we don't like to use the term side effects. Right.
They're all effects.
They're all effects, whether
it's just whether you're targeting for them or not.
Exactly. Right. So that, if it becomes a habit, then all right, habit means that I can have anything in its place. Right. And I'm not just looking for the stimulation.
Right. Is it that you're just taking the 10 minutes to sit down and drink a drink, or is it that you need that caffeine?
Right.
Right.
Yep. And if you find that it is that I need that caffeine,
it
may be time to look at, how do I change that up again? Do I switch things up on different days?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's dive into the 4 questions we ask. Yes. So when I'm dealing with somebody from a nutritional standpoint, and especially a food issue standpoint, I'm having trouble losing weight, I binge eating, whatever it is, I'm always going after what is the stress, because it's usually not the food that's the issue, it's the stress.
What's the trigger?
What's the trigger? What's the stress? What are they dealing with from that stressful standpoint? Again, is it family? Is it whatever? And we're going to keep digging deeper to really get to that root of the stress.
And this isn't always overeating. This could be undereating as well.
Oh,
like
sure.
There's certainly people that when they're stressed, they don't eat.
Yep, exactly.
Or forget to eat. I mean, I can't imagine, like, that doesn't resonate with me at all, but there are certainly people that when they're stressed, they like forget to eat. Like, how could you have possibly forgotten to eat? Like, I'm the opposite. If I'm stressed, I'm eating more.
Right. Well, and there is that trigger, and we've talked about this kind of in the physiological standpoint as well. When I'm stressed, my body starts shutting down systems that I don't need for fight or flight, right? So I don't need a prefrontal cortex. I don't need a digestive system. I don't need to do all these things that are going to take away from my energy that leads to my fight or flight for this very short period of time.
Right.
Unfortunately, we just have chronic stress that keeps those things shut down all the time.
Right.
So, yep.
Okay.
So that you can almost always, this is kind of that magic question. It's like, what's stressing the person? I can really get into that. So what's their personal hell? Is it, this is, which is completely different than are they stressed? What is stressing them? But what is the thing that they fear from and run from that fear the most? Right. The worst thing that could possibly imagine that they
specifically related to food or outside of that? It could be anything.
It can be anything. Yeah. So it's not necessarily there. Many times it will manifest in something else. We will start dealing with it from a food standpoint and then dive much deeper.
Yep.
So, yeah. So what's their personal hell?
Do you have a personal hell?
I mean, I can imagine some things that deal with like my son or things like that would be, but they are not specifically fears that I run from. I guess if there was a fear that I run from and try to avoid at all costs is the fear of really heights. That is the, and not so much the fear of the heights is the fear of the falling.
Right. It's the stopping, not the falling.
Exactly. Yeah. The effects of gravity. Yeah.
So question 3.
Question 3. Yeah. So what is important to them in the most positive sense? Because I also want to identify not just the negatives I want to move to the positive. So what's the most positive thing that we can do? And then where is evolution taking them? And I'm not talking about from the evolutionary biology standpoint, but where are they going in life? What's their calling? What is their ultimate goals in trying to go through these? So these are 4 questions that are going to really allow me to dive deeper into not the food. Right? Yep.
Because rarely is that the issue.
Right.
Just like for us, the ear infection is not about the bacteria or the yeast in the ear infection. It's the underlying disorder.
Right.
That is a whole different ball of wax to discuss and go down that path.
Yep. In the same way, when you deal with skin issues, right? It's usually not a skin issue.
Right.
It's a digestive and right?
allergen, all those things.
Right.
Right.
Yep. So So where is the evolution from there?
Okay. So all that being considered, we've drilled down on these 4 questions. Maybe you've thought about each of those for yourself a little bit. And those tend to be, kind of where we're talking with people when we go down that nutrition path as well. Again, for us, it's always asking more questions, kind of drilling down to mostly uncover what people already know to a certain degree.
Yep.
But if all that being said, now you've identified these, so how do you switch things up?
Yep. So how does the change begin, which is this kind of this next part. So there's a few really key things that comes down to when I'm eating, yes, my quality of the food is key, right? We know that. I mean, that's something that everybody knows, right? I don't think there's going to be anybody that has, any semblance of kind of, brain thought patterns that are going to go, it has no matter. food quality is no matter on my life,
Right.
right? So, but really the using the body for what it's designed for and utilizing it from its best system. So, number one, slow down. Speed of eating is everything. So, I mean, it absolutely is. And I know we're going to get this. Well, I only have 3 minutes to eat.
Mhm.
Well, there are ways around this. You just need to find them,
Mhm.
right? So, slowing down, again, this experiencing textures and tastes. But when I'm stressed, again, we talked about this, where you shut down kind of the whole gut system. And then, it takes about 30 minutes for your brain to actually register how much food you eat, which is part of the binge eating as well. If I eat so fast, but if I slow it down, but what I can do is I can take 10 deep breaths before I eat and 10 deep breaths after I eat. So I put myself into a more parasympathetic system, which basically tells the body it's okay to digest. We are not in a fight or flight state,
Right.
and let's slow down and take this, right? Slowing down also allows you to, again, taste your food. We've made this analogy on before of, good food is like, or great food is like great sex. Right? You don't want it to be over quickly. You
Right.
want it to last. Food should be the same way. There should be some pleasure that's in food, and that's where slowing down with as well. And I don't mean just like purposely taking 30 bites of my food, masticating every single time, chewing it 30 times before I swallow it. If I'm counting that, I'm not experiencing my food. I'm just chewing it again as a from enough.
I have to.
I have to. Yep. Consistency is key. So if I'm trying to work with somebody from a weight loss or a weight management type of thing, or we're trying to get a hold on it, we have a natural circadian rhythm. We've talked about this with sleep. We've talked about this with our hormones, everything. Well, it applies to eating as well. And I want to develop a consistency of eating as much as I can for people. Now, once we get to that, we can experiment with other things, intermittent fasting, and there is a whole separate thing of fasting versus starvation, right? And so people will diet and put themselves into a starvation mode, which a fasting is completely different. Fasting has more of a mental standpoint of I'm developing a healthy relationship with hunger. So two completely different mindsets on fasting versus starvation. And they create different processes in the brain on how you're going to handle it. So consistency is key though with eating. So again, if I'm going to try to eat same time every day, it's not always going to work, but I want to try to be as consistent as I can. So I don't want to skip 2 meals and then have all of my calories and all of my foods at dinner. 30 minutes before I go to bed or an hour before I go to bed. Not our best thing. We'll spread that out. Awareness. So we talked about that language that you use. Talked about textures and taste as well there. But what am I feeling? What am I enjoying as I taste my food? Am I aware of my surroundings, who I'm with? All those things comes into play too.
Yep. On your phone and just shoving the food in.
Right.
Right. Versus taking a little time to enjoy it.
Right. We talked about food quality. Obviously, that's going to play huge into it. Not quantity, but food quality.
Yes.
And then these toxic beliefs that we have, which are many times of that, I have to clean everything off my plate, but all fats are bad. Fats are going to make me fat. Science shows that is not true, right? That, again, I'm going to die of cholesterol because I ate cholesterol. That's a toxic belief. That food cholesterol does not increase our cholesterol. Sugars and other things that create an inflammatory response is what increases our cholesterols, right? So there's a lot that comes in there from a toxic belief standpoint. It's a body image thing, and I just need to constantly be on a diet. Toxic belief. Yep. So that's kind of and there's a lot more that we can go into there, but we'll just kind of leave it at that point. Any other things that people can think of from a change standpoint that you can really give us from what you would see as a making positive change from a nutritional standpoint?
I mean, when it comes to, for me, like when it comes to the consistency thing, I know we've had some situations with people that get stressed and sort of forget to eat. So again, it's that simple thing of like setting a reminder, like, have you eaten in the last 6 hours?
Right.
You know, and it's not necessarily going to target the food quality as much, but again, just that nudge that you do need to actually eat something.
Right. Any good comments or anything in there?
Oh, there's lots of good comments, but
nothing that adds value to the conversation.
Nothing that's going to maximize what we're doing here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
we're having fun as always.
Yes, absolutely. I think we might be getting a little bit better at this webinar thing too.
It's coming along.
Yeah. So, all right. So actually that kind of ends things from where I was going. So that's what
from a food standpoint.
From a food standpoint. Yeah. Yeah.
Laura says her staff functions as the nudge to eat because she gets a little hangry. There's all these T-shirts and things now, you know, forgive me for what I said when I was hungry or hangry. So,
yeah, it's
nice to have those people around you, you know, to, again, as long as they're doing it in a respectful and polite way.
Absolutely. Yes. The Snickers commercial, hopefully you're not giving into a Snickers when you're hangry.
I think I said something to you the other day about being Betty White.
Yes, you did. Yep.
I don't know if it was related to food or not at that point, but you were a little stressed and you were being a little snippy. And I think I might have called you Betty White.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if it changed it at the moment, but
I don't think so.
It was fun for me.
Right.
So anyway, all that being said, hopefully this gives you some thoughts around that relationship with food. And again, is something you've ever even thought about before, some point of view and some things coming from Ryan's brain that the rest of us in this veterinary world haven't necessarily thought about before. So we definitely want to be respectful of time. We try to kind of keep these in the 40-ish minute range. Next week, 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk about the lifestyle friendly career. And we gave a version of this, we gave a lengthened version of this at the Veterinary Leadership Conference at ABMA a few weeks ago, but it really was well received, and we really liked that content. So we're going to shrink it down a little bit and talk about it in a webinar. And of course, the other thing is that our webinars are now being converted into audio for podcast as well. So you can have the webinar replay if you want the slides, but if you're like me and you're not good about sitting down in front of a computer screen and you just want to hear the highlights or kind of get the main gist of it, then these are things that'll be on the podcast as well.
Yes. So the podcast, if you search your favorite podcast app, so iTunes, it is it's high performance vet pro is that, as well as Stitcher and Spreaker. It's on there as well. So those are the easiest way. And if it's not on the one that you use, I think the only one right now that I think that we're not on is SoundCloud. We were on that for a little bit, and they were going to charge us like even more than than podcasting does. So
it's kind of interesting, but you'll find us. We're out there.
So we're out there. They also actually move over to YouTube as well, just as the audio only. So you can listen to us there, which is kind of
we're out there.
Yeah, we're all over there.
Anyway, that's what we want to know. What other things?
So you can register at the hyperliving.com/lifestyle webinar. You can email us at life@hyperliving.com. And then, so we did this thing back at the end of December, which was around mindset and meditation for some people, which was we did some sessions for what's called mindscaping, which is something that I do, which is kind of helping people break through some challenges. And then we kind of give away to those people as an enhancement, a Muse headband. So which
is a biofeedback device.
Yep. So it's a EEG device that you can use to teach meditation. So we wanted to do something similar around Valentine's Day kind of thing, this couple thought process as well. It could be used for singles as well, but we wanted to do something very similar to it. So I'm going to scroll over here for it. So this month we're going to do something and you'll have till February 14th to sign up for it,
Yeah,
till the next
somewhere around
webinar.
there. Yep.
But what we're going to do is we're going to do a nutrition coaching, and it's going to get 3 food psychology sessions, which is going to dive in a little bit deeper on that. Kind of the thought process behind it was maybe if we're dealing with this from a couple standpoint, it might be one for one person, one for another person, and then maybe one combined, so that we can help identify and create some solutions for them.
Yep.
So that was there. One person can use it. It's however you wanted to do that. We also are going to give away 2 weeks, or I guess 2 sets of meal plans for this program called TriFuel. This is a really cool program that I just found out about, which is a meal creation kind of thing where they send you your meal. So there's Blue Apron and all those there around, but this one is based on your particular goals. So you can put in your height, your weight, what your goal is from a nutritional standpoint, and you receive 6 meals for your week. And what it'll do is you have those meals are based on all the things for you. It also will allow you to track all of your Fitbit. I mean, you can put in all your Fitbit data, and as well as if you have things like biomarkers done from Wellness FX or Direct Labs, or you can include all that. You can also have your genetic testing put in there as well. So that helps to maximize your nutritional standpoint. But so basically what you'll get is 2 weeks of that. So you can either use it as one person gets 12 meals, or you can have one person gets 6 meals and another person gets 6 meals that are specific to them.
Right. And again, you can individualize for those 2 people.
Yep. So really cool program. So we wanted to kind of introduce that. If you wanted to go beyond that, there is a subscription. You can do it weekly or monthly and different things like that and skip them around. But we wanted to kind of, that is about as $140 value for those 12 meals. Yeah. And then, so we were going to do this for a $3.99, which is what we did with the Muse session. We're offering one more session kind of on this, and wanted to do that for everybody. So if you have questions on it, you can hit us back up at the life@highperfliving.com. Shoot us an email and we'll send you the details on it and let you know a little bit more about it.
And we'll send something out about it, possibly post it in the groups and things here over the next week or 2 as well. We just wanted to sort of preliminarily announce it here as well. So hopefully it'll be something people resonate with. If not, it's just, this is, always experimentation for us, right? It's always trying another thing. So, so hopefully this will feed forward into couples dynamics, and or one individual can have some more sessions with us as well.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so we appreciate your time, and we are going to jump off of here. Yes, unless you have anything else.
Do not.
Okay.
Does anybody have any final questions on anything that you can ask?
I will glance and see if we have any more.
Okay.
Excuse me. I don't see other specific questions in here, but as always, if you're not watching live, then feel free to shoot us an email or message us on Facebook, in the groups, wherever, or just directly through our page. Excuse me, and then we can bounce back with that. So again, thank you very much for your time. This has been a skosh longer than our average webinar, but we appreciate your attention, and
it's because you let me talk the most.
I know. And so we appreciate your time, and we will hopefully see you back in 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
So have a great Groundhog Day.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us at High Performance Vet Pro Radio. We hope to hear from you soon. Like this episode? Leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. It helps us to reach more veterinary professionals. For more information or to contact us, please visit us at highperfliving.com. Until next time, remember to live every day with intention.